Alexa, stop. Oh, all right. Welcome to a special Friday edition. I'm so sorry to keep you waiting. Something is wrong with my streaming software here. It was said I was live earlier, and all right, I had to get my phone out of there. But watched the women's game last night. So it feels weird to me because I just did this and I thought I recorded the entire thing. Let me pull the chat up here. And I'm sorry to you, Nickel Stacker. I thought I was talking to you in the chat the entire time. And apparently not. Let's get that chat up there. All right, here we go. Watch the women's game last night. If you watched that on Peacock, absolutely fantastic game. The IU women really came alive, and that's what toughness, determination, desire, all that stuff you really want to talk about that you want to see on the men's team. We saw it all for the women's team, and there were people lined up around the block to get into the game for hours and hours. It was great to see Assembly Hall during games like this. If you're there, it is like a person almost. It comes alive. It's like an old woman, like Mother Earth. Once they get so many people in that building and people get so fired up over the game, you can see it was really, really tough for Iowa to really kind of get in their groove in the second half. Indiana took it to them and really did something, denying the ball away from Clark on the outside. And the way they were switching on their screens, Iowa, obviously, they run a lot of screens out top to get Clark the ball and to get her open shots from deep. And Indiana did a great job they really switched a lot of those screens before the screen even came so they could get the next help person like out on her immediately. And they did a great job of that. I mean, that's what you got to do against a player like that. A la like the guy from Nebraska that killed us in that game the other night. It's like you got to come up with a plan. You could tell that like Morin for Indiana, the coach, she's genius. I mean, she can coach her team and get them to do the things that she wants them to do. And they play with just a grit, desire. I thought Parrish was huge in this game. She had some play where she went right into the basket, had some really physical plays, and then made a couple of 3-pointers at some really critical times. Also, Scalia was huge, hitting some of those threes from the outside, and that was just a game changer. And also, her defense and how she drove the ball was absolutely fantastic. It was really, really fun to see. So, and then Garzon, yes. Her defense around the basket and Mackenzie Holmes' defense around the basket was absolutely fantastic. So, we saw a lot in that women's game. And watching that, like the type of like pride you feel when you watch Indiana play and they play that type of a game, it is very, very fantastic, and it fills you up with a lot of not too much you can say more about that game. Clark got hurt. She got 22 points and had, I believe it was 9 assists, 3 turnovers, but for the most part, in the second half, they really took her out of her game. And you could tell, even at the beginning of the game, there were times she was getting very frustrated. I'm going to tell you, she gets more calls than Zach Edey does. And there was one play right at the end of the first quarter where Scalia was playing defense and like Caitlin Clark just takes her elbow and pushes her like that, and the defense, the defense gets called for the foul. I thought that was the worst one. That was when I tweeted something out. It was like, she gets more calls than Zach Edey. What is this? You're that far away from the basket. You just try to push somebody. No, sorry, nickel stacker. Something with my software went wrong, and like it just, I thought I was live, and I did a whole show and thought I was live, and I was not. So we're here now. Special Friday show. A lot of stuff to talk about with. There's a video I just watched, and I'll say it's made by Alex Torres, and he is talking about Mike Woodson. It's very worth it. Let me see if I can find Alex Torres. But he brought up something interesting that Indiana, are they gonna have their hand pushed by other coaches out there that might be available? Do you think that could present itself in this offseason for the Hoosiers? Like, if they have a chance to go get a coach, they need to go get a coach. And this NBA crap, it's just not working. And that's just obvious. I think the athletic director and everybody else involved has to look at it and think, this, whatever is happening there now, it's not working. And I wanted to make this episode today, too, this live stream, because, sometimes I make these episodes and I have a lot more to say sometimes than what just was in the episode. And afterwards, I think, oh, I should have, I forgot to say this. A lot of times I have note cards and everything going in, but I try to make the videos like 12 minutes to 15 minutes long. So not always do I have just the time to get everything in. And I just try to get the most exciting things. But today, we're talking about the Hoosier women, and then Ohio State. Is Ohio State going to go after Dusty May? And that might be the one thing that falls if they make him some type of an offer. I don't know. And I know a lot of people are on here saying, we need Pearl or Chris Beard or Drew from Baylor or all these different guys. Like, can we get these guys? I really don't know, but it's an interesting thing coming towards the end of the season here. Will that force Indiana's hand into going in a different direction? I had just a person, and I'm going to read some of the comments today, because I had a person comment about, how Archie Miller was given 4 years, right? God, I can't believe he was there 4 years. With the COVID stuff and everything, it felt like 2 really frustrating years with Archie Miller. And then to me, I went to the game. I thought Archie Miller did get a really kind of a raw. Huggins is the new Ohio State coach. That probably is. But sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But talking about just how the end of the season's going to come on. I mean, if Indiana loses out, and I don't want to see that. I want to see, in these last games, you really want to see them be, if Mike Woodson's definitely going to be here next year, I want to see some improvement. I want to see, to me, right at this point, and this is what I think any good college basketball coach would do. It's like, this season's over. You got to start developing the players off the bench. Caleb Banks, no matter what, if Caleb Banks is going to be there next year, you better put him out on the court right now so you can figure out if he's worth it to spend your time working with this guy or if he just doesn't want to be there. I don't understand what has happened to him. I was at a game. Earlier I was talking about Archie Miller, how Archie Miller's kind of like the COVID ended that one year. And that was the one year we were going to get in the tournament. That is what I was going to say earlier. I went to that game. I went to the Minnesota game that year. It was like on March 3rd. And then a couple weeks later, we played in the Big Ten tournament. We killed Nebraska in the Big Ten tournament. And then we all know what happened. COVID came. The tournament got canceled. Everything got canceled. So Archie Miller, he was there for 4 years, but it didn't feel like 4 years. I mean, he had the COVID in there too. New coach, no more experiments. I can definitely see that. One thing I know going on, and it's kind of hard to like realize the dynamics sometimes of these small schools, but Dusty May has done a really great job at FAU at keeping all those kids there. They only play, I mean, like their arena only holds 2,900 people. I mean, every high school arena in Indiana holds more than 2,900 people. So Dusty May's ability this year, I know a lot of people are saying like, well, he had the good year last year and now he's really maybe struggling a little bit more. He had to do a lot of work to keep those kids there because it's FAU. I mean, you don't think those kids would rather go to, once they had some exposure, they wanted to go to places like Kentucky or IU or, where they're going to get like the big time money and the big time. Because does FAU have a lot of NIL money? I mean, I know that players can make money off their Instagram but that's just the dynamic that Dusty May has been dealing with this year after having some success. And that is one thing that has really come to my attention after Archie Miller has been our coach here is that every coach that coaches at Dayton is successful. Is like the conference they play in, they have like one of the best arenas to play in. They have some of the best facilities. They have some of the best recruiting as far as like the area around there. They can like recruit and draw some players from Indiana and things like that. So Archie Miller's success at Dayton, should have maybe really been examined a little bit more. And like, thank you, Michael. Click the thumbs up button. Yeah, this is an afternoon edition of Indiana Sports Connection. If this is your first time here, hit that thumbs up button. Ring that bell every time I go live. Here's what my plan is with this channel. Like when I have time to edit videos, I'm going to make videos where I edit the videos. When I don't have time, and Friday is a terrible time to put videos on YouTube. So on Fridays, a lot of times, I think I'll just like do like a live video because the videos where I add more of this and more of that, it may not seem like that much like on the screen, but it takes like a ton of research and it takes a ton of, really wherewithal, I guess, like within my own brain to really like put together the video sometimes. If that makes any sense. And, it's a tough world out there on YouTube, I'll tell you. But yeah, let's talk about the coaching search. Like, I mean, right now is a time where do you think if Dolson, like a coach came available, that he would, if it was the right guy, he's going to like make his move to go get that guy? Because I think just at this point, after this amount of time, it's about that time. I mean, it's 3 years in and you don't want, Tom Crean really benefited from getting that few years where, we were so bad and we had the sanctions and everything. So, just so you know, it's like that first Tom Crean team, they lost 6 games by 20 points or more. And this team we have right now has lost, I think, 5 games by 20 points or more. And it's not a bunch of walk-ons. So I'm reading these comments over here. Yeah, go ahead. I mean, Robert, you are not wrong. I mean, if you hired Dusty May, there's no surefire way to know who's going to be a good coach. I mean, really, you think about Bob Knight coming from Army back then there wasn't the media scrutiny as much and all this stuff, but that had to be kind of a risky move when you really think about it. It's like this unknown guy, that played at Ohio State and then coached at Army a few years. I'm just saying, he was a diamond in the rough, really, and he embraced that. He embraced it. So yeah, Dusty May, if he didn't have IU ties, he would just be another up-and-coming coach. I think for me with Dusty May, it's his personality. I've watched a lot of interviews he's done, and I see a lot of his work ethic, how he takes a ton of notes, and how he really, and he can be a very intense guy. I think your personality to be a good college coach, more than in the NBA, you have to have a lot of you have to be able to deal with a lot of different types of personalities. Where in the NBA, it might just be more of a job where you're like, okay, like we got to be here at this time. It's more like structural. In college basketball, it's more mental because you're dealing with kids and now it's even more, I think it's got to be more confusing for these kids because they're coming into college and they have money. They're getting money from NIL. So it's like, not only are they like, it would just be, you need even that much more of a person as a coach to be by your side to kind of help you deal with that a little bit at the same time. I'm going to tell you, I had a chance to play golf at Indiana, and I went to Indiana to play golf, and I was just too immature. I was working full time, and I went there on a golf scholarship, and I got a DUI right away, and then they put me on these sanctions, not sanctions, but they gave me these certain stipulations that I had to do, and I was just too young and immature. I just did not care that much about everything that was going on with that, and I just totally blew it. So in that way, a lot of times when I watch these young kids, I see their point of view. I wish I had somebody that when I was 18 years old that would have taken me aside and kind of explained some things to me in a different type of way, not in but yeah, it is tough. These kids coming into college and now they're getting this money. It's just totally different than it even was 5 years ago. And I think that makes it even that much more difficult for somebody like Mike Woodson to be able to, get through to these kids because he is older and it's far removed from, his time at IU. But not only that, it's just the entire world has changed so much, even in the past 5 years, basketball with the NIL. And look, for me to just level with everybody, here's what I really think has kind of happened at Indiana. So we have all this NIL money, and we have a bounty of NIL money, and then we bring in Mike Woodson as the coach. Well, I mean, he's got to be thinking, I got to bring in these high recruits. That's what people want. And in that way, he really did that. But also in that way, I think Mike Woodson would have benefited more from being the coach if he was the coach at Indiana, and that, like, the NIL money and that wasn't part of it. Even though when we brought him in, it was like, well, we're going to get these NBA guys that are, one and dones, the guys that are going to go play in the NBA, then they're going to come play at IU, and then we're going to be that much more talented. And that all sounded really, really good at the time, didn't it? I mean, I was drinking that same Kool-Aid at the same time. Everybody was really getting on that bandwagon. And then you kind of like fast forward a couple of years and you kind of see where, I mean, college basketball, and I'm ready for, I do think this is affecting the game big time, having all these people that have these like fifth years or these extra years that are given on. So you got like guys like Xavier Johnson that are 25 years old. And I mean, let's face it, he just doesn't mesh well with these guys on this team. I don't think Xavier Johnson even meshed well with the team last year, but I think he just had better leadership on that team. So like all of those things, there's just so many things changing with the NIL in Indiana. I think Mike Woodson, when he came in, thought, just having this offseason, like bringing in some 5 stars, that really, I mean, I was pretty excited about it in the offseason. I mean, I looked at that Wares tape and I thought this guy, he's got potential. And I mean, he's got, Ware has a lot more potential as far as like being a dynamic player in the NBA compared to like TJD or anybody, just because of how he shoots the ball. Now, we've not put him in any positions to shoot the ball or play. Where I feel like could be more like Kevin Durant like. I mean, does anybody else see that? It's just like, I see how he moves. I see how he moves out there. He's not a guy that can be right around the basket with like big centers because he's going to get pushed around. I mean, he can rebound. He can do that stuff, but I feel like his game is going to be a perimeter shooting game. And that makes it tough, because then like I'm really looking at Mike Woodson and really looking at when he coached in the NBA, and you can tell even at this point, preparing Kel'el Ware for the NBA, I don't think he's doing a great job of that, because he's not setting him up for shots. If Ware is one player on our team that could do some mid-range work and get some shots in the mid-range, like we've not really seen that. We've not really seen him set people up that way. Get somebody to switch on to him so that he can get a shot. He's 7 foot tall. I mean, a lot of times he will shoot from straight away, or, he'll take a three, but a lot of times those threes that like he takes and Mbako takes, they feel like, I got the ball here and nobody's guarding me, so I'm just going to like shoot a three. That's not like always a great, spend the money. Just look at the comments here. Spend the money, get the best man for the job. Yes. It's hard for NBA coaches to, I mean, if you can imagine doing a job, like I sell mattresses, so, I mean, and I did sales in New York, selling like buildings and things like that in New York, renovated buildings and to investors and things like that. I mean, if you do a job every day, like working in the NBA is a job where every day it's travel and it's practice and it's workouts. I mean, that's what in your brain, that's what you think the job is, It's like, it's just travel and this and that. In college basketball, you really have to, like, you have to look at every single game in college basketball in the way of like, okay, Northwestern, like, I mean, even back in the forever, it's like Northwestern's coming to Assembly Hall. It's a game where you got to find a way to motivate these guys. You got to find things within the game in college and then really get them motivated by that, if that makes any sense. I mean, you got to like almost get under these kids' skin, like in a way. You got to be like, remember the last time we played them? Remember how, he schooled you all over the court. I mean, aren't you going to do something about it? That's the kind of button pressing I feel like you need in college basketball. And I don't think any of that really goes on in the NBA. Now, if you watch like The Last Dance and all that with Michael Jordan, I mean, he like did that to the players on his teams. I mean, he was just like, if you can't handle this, how are you going to handle the NBA finals? You can't handle me being hard on you in practice. How are you going to handle that? I mean, that's just kind of like a mindset where you go after something in a way where you kind of take it on like, we are not going to be denied of this. We're going to find an edge in some way or another that we're going to be able to I saw this Hoosier vodka too. So buy your Hoosier vodka. That's an NIL sponsor. Oh my God. They sell the game day lager at Assembly Hall too. It's like, I don't know if that's like an Indiana owned company or just looking at some of your comments over here. Yeah, you were right, Robert. Watching this team does make you want to start drinking again. It's a head scratcher. And tomorrow at noon against Northwestern, no, Penn State. I keep saying forever in my mind, it was like Penn State, Northwestern. They were always just complete bottom feeders. Like you didn't even give like a Northwestern or Penn State game a second thought. How many of you guys watch like vintage games on YouTube? Because I do all the time, late at night. All the time. There are so many. Galen Clavio has a great channel on YouTube and he does, I'm sure it's the same Galen, that does the Back Home Network, but there are a bunch of games on there. I really encourage you to check it out because it really, unfortunately, Michael, we're in the most conservative state, I believe, in the entire United States. So we'll probably be the last to legalize marijuana. But there's one other thing I want to bring up on here. I watched this Grueling Sports podcast. I used to watch it once in a while, and Risley was on there, and they kicked him off of there, and I'm just kind of curious about what you guys think about that, because it was like they kicked him off of there because he was being critical of the team. He was being critical of, but I feel like, you know what? That's what YouTube is all about. I mean, you want to This is like a more realistic version of really the crap that we used to watch on ESPN. I mean, I used to sit around all day on ESPN. I would watch ESPN sometimes for hours to just hear like a 5-minute blip about Indiana or a 5-minute blip about, the Colts. And it's just like our media is like so much better now. Well, I mean, I don't think you're going to miss much of a game tomorrow. I mean, if the first game was any indication, and I want Mike Woodson to watch a film of how the women's team played defense against Caitlin Clark yesterday. Like how they were switching was in a way where they were able to get up on her before. They were switching early. So if you switch super early, then you can have the person come from the other side. You see what I'm saying? That's how we need to play defense on the perimeter. This nail slot rim is not working. And I've watched like 20 videos about it. And I keep talking to people about it. I'm like, well, that guy, he's supposed to be there. He's supposed to be in like weak side help defense there. But so many of the guys, they never help. I mean, do you notice that in Indiana's defense? We'll guard a person and make them drive baseline, and then nobody's there to pick them up. I mean, Purdue's defense is like, if you watch Purdue, they have a specific like structure where they play ice defense out on the perimeter to try to drive those things baseline so that this is going to feed you right into Edie. I don't know. You know what? Mike Woodson, he's supposed to be a defensive specialist, right? And that's what, I mean, but if you go back, there's a 2014 article that talks about Mike Woodson's defense when he was the coach of the Knicks. And it was like, they characterize it as this switch every time defense does not work. And that's what it is. Like, our guys don't know when to switch, and they don't know when to fight through the screen. And that part of it is the teaching part of it by the coach. I mean, you got to be really detail oriented if you want to be that type of a defensive coach in college. And really, it's going to boil down to a lot of positioning. I mean, the only camps I've been to Steve Alford basketball camp, and all we talked about was the motion offense like the entire time. And all of the motion offense is about positioning and how the person is playing in front of you. So if this guy is playing here, then you're going to make this cut like this. And then if this guy's playing you this way, then you're going to go baseline. Like it's all that. I mean, and within that positioning, it can get very confusing. Like you don't know what you're looking for, but that's where the teaching comes in, where you really have to stop practice and like show people like he was here. So your move was here. Like, okay. There was one play in the Nebraska game that I thought was really telling of this Indiana team was Galloway drives baseline. Mbako's standing out on the wing, but not on the baseline. And the guy who was guarding him was in between Galloway and the ball. He was watching Galloway with the ball. He wasn't watching Mbako. It's like all Mbako had to do was take 2 steps to the right to make himself open, and the pass was there. He was going to have a wide open 3-pointer, but that's not what happened. Like he stayed in the same spot. He was just literally was like asleep, and I don't know if you remember that play. And Galloway came over, and it really just sticks out in my mind. He was like, yeah, like move to like right there, because that's where the passing lane was. That's pretty much like every single play this team has made all season was like that. It's just like people in the wrong place at the wrong time, not moving to the right place. Just a lot of. I am 41. I started following IU. There are pictures of me, my dad and his brothers all watching the 87 game, and I was like 5. So, the late 80s teams, I like barely remember. The teams I really remember the most were like 90, 91, 92. 89, I don't really remember. I remember that being kind of a big deal. And I had some like shirts and things like that when like Jay Edwards and them came in. And, but I just didn't understand basketball enough to really be into it until I was about 10. When I was 10, because, this is like when I was 10, when the 93 team lost to Duke, that was rough for me. That was the first time I watched a team and I really wanted them to win it all. And I really wanted, yes, Calbert Chaney. And I remember that game. I remember this is going to seem embarrassing, but there was like 5 minutes left in that game. I remember like praying in the bathroom and then like crying as a kid after that game. Just I wanted them to win so bad. But everybody's got their wherever you started. But as far from me, when I was like growing up, I dreamed of playing for Bob Knight, and Luke Recker lived right behind me. So, I kind of thought, I'm going to make it happen. Turns out I'm only like 5'11". So, I would have loved that. I love basketball. I did play. I will tell you, I played on DeKalb's high school team in practice only. And this was, I'm just going to tell you this story on here without rambling on and on and on too much. But, so Cliff Hawkins, who was the coach of DeKalb's team, I was doing baseball workouts like all through the fall. I would go to the auxiliary gym and I'd be there because I was really more of a baseball player, and I would be there at like 5 a.m. And so like through like November, it would be like October, November, I was there. And then he saw me there, Cliff Hawkins, and he was the coach of DeKalb's team, and he coached Luke Recker and a lot of good players that were at DeKalb through that time. And he saw me there all the time, and he asked me, he's like, "Hey, you should come out for the basketball team." And I told him, I'm like, I just can't jump. I can't do this. So I didn't. He put me on the team, and I practiced. And I will tell you, I realized right away I was just not cut out for basketball. Now, my best skills when I played basketball were probably my physicality and, just being just outright brutal with people. And that's really why Cliff Hawkins asked me to practice with the team. He knew like I played football and I played baseball, and he saw me there at 5 a.m. every day, pitching and stuff like that. We had pitching mounds set up in the auxiliary gym. So, but that was very overwhelming. I like going out and playing on a high school team that was well coached like that. I can definitely see how guys that go from high school to college and go to that next level could really, really struggle, because I had played some high level basketball, I guess, but not on that level. And that was just a different type of basketball that I really was not involved in. So that's my story of playing high school basketball. That was it. So I practiced with them for about 6 or 8 weeks with the team. And then I told him after a while, I was like, I love being here every day. And, I was still doing my baseball workouts in the morning. Then I was going to these basketball practices after school. So I'd be there till like 7 o'clock. And I was like, man, I can't do this anymore. Like, I just know I'm not ever going to be a successful basketball player. And I think, I'm not going to be a good basketball player. I could shoot from the outside decently well. I mean, I feel like people in Indiana always, learn how to shoot. But, once you really get into like some really organized basketball, you realize it's a lot more than that. And you really got to be in shape and you got to be able to do everything. So I always think about that when I think about like Gabe Cup struggling or these guys coming into Indiana struggling, because that's got to be even a bigger adjustment. I don't think it's as big of adjustment. I think Indiana high school basketball is still like the cream of the crop, but it's tough. I mean, Indiana basketball is better than not Indiana Hoosiers basketball, but Indiana high school basketball. You were right. I mean, the shooters used to be abundant. I mean, with the days, like we used to have a team where it was like, Leary was on the bench and Pat Grant. Like we had guys where if he was going to bench like 2 or 3 guys, we could bring guys off the bench that were better than any shooters we have out there now by far. And just not there anymore. Just not able to have that confidence, have that swagger. Like Bob Knight had that. I think he had that type of swagger where it's like his team came in and I think he took all the heat also. I don't think Mike Woodson's doing a good job of that. I think if your team is playing bad as a coach, I don't think sitting there and saying like, well, I got to get them over the hump is really, really helping at this point. And I know he's said that like a million times. That's not just because he's said that so many times why I find it annoying. I find it annoying because there's no creativity to anything he says. I mean, just think if this was going like this and somebody else was the coach. I would say there's no excuses. And I say there's no excuses to miss free throws. And if, you know what, I would take a video if people were going to, rip us about shooting free throws. I'd take a video of myself in Assembly Hall with all the music blaring and everything going on in this day of social media. If people are ripping you for like, this is how we're shooting free throws, but we still can't make them in a game. Like what's the deal with that? You know what I mean? I mean, a free throw is something that is like so automatic, especially if you grew up in Indiana. I mean, I remember like coaches in like 3rd grade looking at your free throw percentage. We got to work on this, It's like, and somehow we made them. I mean, God, I remember playing with this kid, Ryan Johnson. He was like a 95% free throw shooter in like 3rd grade. I mean, it's not difficult. It's like hitting a 3-foot putt. You can get in your mind, but if you have the confidence and you put the work in and you really, really, if you really put the preparation in, then you have the confidence to, that's my opinion. I don't think they're really putting the right type of preparation in. And here is something I was thinking about the other day with the free throws and what I would do. This is what I would do. I would have every player, I'll say, write down your pre-shot routine on a piece of paper. Write down every action that you make during your pre-shot routine and why that's important to you. And then what we're going to do is we're going to shoot free throws. We're going to go around the room. We're all going to say what our pre-shot routine is out loud so that you can actually hear it out loud. Don't say, everybody's got their thing. Whether Steve Alford like did the socks thing and, Steve Alford said on his lips every time he shot a free throw, gently over the front of the rim. That's why you could see his lips moving when he shot the free throw. That's the type of thing where you make kids think about something that maybe they weren't thinking about before. That's what I would do. Write down all of your pre-shot routines. Tell me why it's important to you. Come back. We're all going to go over this, and then we're going to talk about this, and then you're going to say these things out loud. When you say things out loud, it gives it more meaning. And yeah, Alford was automatic. Alford was automatic from everywhere. It was like, but that was just one idea I had. I think you got to be creative with these kids. You do. I would make them play defense with their arms tied behind their back. I would make them do. I would make Malik Renew definitely play defense with his arms behind his back. Here's one thing I massively remember about like one of the first times like saw Knight at a basketball camp. And this is exactly what he said. He said, you can either play defense like this, or you can play defense like this. And that is all but the truth. It's like you can either be a crazy man out there on defense, or you can just be there, I always remember watching those tapes of Abernathy on the teams, and his hands were always moving. Like there's like anything you can do to like distract the guy, like do it, and unbelievable. And I always like to get some nostalgia in on this show, but it is getting to that time of the afternoon. The free throws, I feel like it is like it's a symptom of like a bigger problem. It's like if you start having a lot of health problems and, you start to have like this go wrong and this go wrong and this go wrong and this go wrong, then like suddenly you have diabetes. I feel like that's what is happening with our free throws. It's like you're so not buttoned up in so many categories that's just one that's just going to like fly out the window. I mean, that's just right now. I am assuming that IU's gonna lose out. And Nickel Stacker, I saw your comment from earlier. Like tonight, I have my nieces and nephews are coming into town. They have actually an AAU tournament over here, which is crazy. I mean, I will tell you, these AAU teams, they'll play like 4 games in one day. Like, I just don't really think you get a whole lot out of that. I mean, I never played 4 basketball games in one day. That's just, it's overkill. It's just not necessary. But my nieces and nephews are coming into town, and it's my wife's birthday this weekend. So we are going out to eat. So yeah, I can't do anything, a live stream or anything tonight. The only hump is like Mike Woodson is the hump at this time. He's become the hump. That's all there is to it. I have to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. Alexa, play the Humpty Hump.
Humpty Hump interlude and similar songs on Amazon Music.
That's right, Humpty Humping is greasy McNeasy. Don't be hating. Let her make her own choice. Hush your lover. And I ain't mad. That other one chose on you. Cause she's a bad bitch. You can have her. keep these hoes.
Alexa, stop. Yep, I have a daughter. I am married. I live in Huntertown on the north side of Fort Wayne, actually, and yeah, I have a daughter. So that's why I don't do, like, I would love to do live streams and all of that. I don't have a basement at this house, so I would love to do like the live streams and set up like a whole real studio and everything, so I could do all that stuff, but. Just a lot of times late at night. I mean, I'm going to tell you, I started this channel really like, I would just be like, after I did have kids and everything, I would just be watching these games late at night by myself all the time. And a lot of times just me and my dad would just talk on the phone. And I just started thinking to myself, like, a lot more people have got to be having these exact same conversations, because the two of us, we would just be like, you know, we're just both like super passionate fans. So when it goes bad, yeah, we get really upset. And when it goes good, we get really excited. You know, that's what life is all about anyway. It's like, you don't want, when things are bad, they're bad. And when things are good, they're good. So that's a big reason why I started this channel. I was just like, a lot of times I would just be watching the games. And also, I mean, I just thought there were a lot of people out there saying certain things in the media or wherever, you know, like, I'm not affiliated with the media like, you know, Jim Coyle is, or, you know, Kent Sterling's affiliated with the media. I don't think Kent Sterling's involved like with any particular company or anything that's controlling him or anything like that. But yeah, I just saw all that stuff out there, and I just thought, like, you know, the fans sometimes have a different perspective of this stuff. Like, a lot of times the stuff that like me and my dad were saying in our conversations, I'm like, well, they're not saying that on this show, or they're not saying that on this show. And I love Jim Coyle, and, you know, I've met him a few times, and I don't understand. I know, like, way back in the day, he was in the rodeo. He was like a professional rodeo man. I don't know how he got into this. Just because I like him as a person and everything like that, but I don't understand how he's on the radio, though. I mean, to tell you the truth, like, I just think there would be a lot more preparation and but yeah, Jim Coyle, he is a funny guy. I mean, every time I tune into him, it's you never know what you're gonna get, and so in that way, and Kent Sterling, I started watching him too, and then I realized that, you know, people my dad worked with watched him and stuff like that. So, yeah, he is good. He is good on commercials. Every time I always think Jim Coyle reminds me a lot of there's this skit that Jimmy Fallon did on SNL where he's like working at the radio station. It's like, I always think of that whenever I just turn on Jim Coyle. And we're back. It's 5:35 in the AM down here at the station. Jim Coyle coming at you. We got Andy Moore on the Andy Moore hotline coming up. Here we are, you know. No, you're right. I mean, at the games, like Jim Coyle, he knows a ton of people. And yeah, I would like to be connected with him. He's messaged me a few times. Whenever we work it out, like a time slot or something like that, I would like love to be on his show and, you know, give me more exposure. Cause like, I'm just some guy. I'm just sitting in my kitchen here. But And like anything I built upstairs. I spent a lot of time in New York. I moved there in 2009 and I lived there till 2018. And then I lived in Tampa, Florida for 3 years before that. And I worked for an advertising company there. But yeah, the only thing I've been getting every time Jim Coyle, he's always saying, there's no way Woodson's leaving. There's no way. And I've heard a few people, Bozich on the show, and saying like, well, I don't know about that because, I mean, if Indiana loses out, it's going to get really, really hot in that seat. It just is. This is Indiana. Like, we can't be a bottom dweller in the Big Ten, in a bad Big Ten. Like this year with, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like we're bringing in these high level recruits this year. And I saw this as a good year for Indiana to make a good step forward, to be like right there at like number 4 or 3 with this team and then have like a good building block going forward. That has entirely fallen apart. It's, I mean, to think now there's still a little bit left of this season. We got 5 games and we've had, I mean, if you look back, I mean, Archie Miller had like a bad year and they won like their last 4 games. I think they won their last 4 games to get in the tournament that year of COVID, but then the tournament was canceled. But I mean, in these last 5 games, if we don't see any type of improvement, and even more than that, if we start to see like kind of what we saw in that last game, like a drastic decline, and then you kind of feel like guys give up on the team, to me, that holds a lot of weight. You can't be playing basketball in Indiana and the guys give up on the team. That's really yeah, you're right. Yeah, Jim Coyle's show, having Don Fisher on there every Tuesday, that's always one of my favorite segments to watch because of anybody in Indiana basketball that's sat there for a long, long time and watched it come and go. Like, I respect his opinion really more than anybody else's opinion is Don Fisher. When it comes down to what he says about certain players, and what he said about this team has not been good. Has not been good at all. And we're even kind of like forgetting about some of the dirty plays. That's kind of like we're losing so much now. Kind of forgot a little bit about the dirty plays. But, it's just in a bad state of affairs. And yeah, Don Fisher, I feel for him that, he's been there this long and, he's getting towards the end of, what he's going to probably do at Indiana. He's in his 80s and he probably doesn't want to see it end like this, for himself going out as a broadcaster. He probably wants to see something different, so, and there's no indication like he's going to retire. I mean, he's still going strong, but yeah, just his disappointment definitely makes me think a lot about Indiana, like when he's that disappointed about it. Yeah, and the people in the media, they can't Jim Coyle can't come out on a radio show and say like, Mike Woodson needs to be fired tomorrow, I mean, that's why I'm on YouTube only. It's like, yeah. Yeah, I was surprised Allen got fired too. So that's what's kind of made me think that Scott Dolson might pull a trigger on this, because I thought Tom Allen would get one more year And that football team, it was terrible this year. I mean, normally I watch a lot of their games. I watched just about all of them. And there were some, it was like after the Louisville game, I felt like the next game, like they didn't play hard. That was the same thing with the football team. Really what's going on with the basketball team right now. They kind of gave up on the season. And when you do have that at a place like Indiana that is so entrenched in basketball, normally a change comes. It really does, because you have extremely invested fans. You have extremely invested, like, just a base of people that really want to see something even beyond the football team. Like, forget about the football team. There are millions more that care about this. So we're going to have to see. Alexa, play Bang the Drum.
Bang the Drum All Day by Todd Rundgren from Apple Music.
But that's going to do it for me today. This is the best drive time song on the radio. It's Friday. It's almost 2 o'clock. It's a good time to get out there, do something, have yourself a great weekend, talk about the Hoosiers more. I may live stream the game tomorrow during the game. I'll be at work, but I still will be able to do it. So we'll see how that works out. And until next time, stay classy out there, Hoosier fans.